Welcome to the Retro Workbench. I'm a massive fan of the Apple TV Plus show Severance, and if you haven't seen it, you're missing out. It's a science fiction thriller about a biotech company called Lumen that developed a brain implant that essentially splits a person's mind in half, creating a second person in the same body. The cast features incredible actors like Adam Scott, Britt Lauer, John Turturro, Patricia Arquette, Christopher Walken. The list goes on and on. If you've ever wished you could send another version of yourself to work so you didn't have to go, this is the show for you. In addition to the acting, writing, and cinematography, I really love the retro vibes of Severance. The computers used by the Ennies look straight out of the 1970s, but with graphics only possible on later computers. The cars are all from the 70s to the 90s. Everybody uses modern smartphones, but phone booths are still a thing. With all these different elements from different times, you're never quite sure exactly when Severance is set. And of course, a great TV show needs a great theme song. The Severance theme, composed by Theodore Shapiro, is a haunting piano melody that feels as mysterious as the show itself. Variations of the theme played throughout the show, which always fit the scenes perfectly. I thought it might be fun to do my own cover of the Severance theme. The distinctive sound of the SID chip in the Commodore 64 is perfect for an 80s style cover. And just like how Severance combines technologies from different times to make the setting feel ambiguous, I'll use a computer from a totally different time to do the mixing, the iMac G4. Well, I didn't intend this to be a hardware repair video, but when things turn 40 years old, they start to break down. So I got the Commodore 64 hooked up to my computer using this USB audio video capture device. And then I opened up OBS to try to start recording some audio. And the audio was just totally unusable. It was noisy. I tried to apply a noise gate to eliminate it, and it did get rid of it in the silent parts. But as soon as I would play a note, you could still hear the noise. So that was just unacceptable. I thought maybe I could try running the audio through this Behringer UCA 202, which is a higher quality USB audio capture device, but I got the same problem. So it was obvious that the problem was coming from the Commodore 64 itself. I've looked online to see if there's a solution to this problem, and what people are saying is that the noise can come from the SID chip's audio input. Now, the audio input on the SID chip is not really used for a lot of things. You can use it to filter the audio, but there's nothing I would ever want to do that involves the audio input. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this computer apart. I'm going to take the SID chip out. I'm going to bend the audio input pin out and then put the SID chip back in. So that should eliminate the noise. This chip right here is the chip that's giving us problems. This is the SID chip. Maybe I can get a little bit closer. It's hard to see with all the thermal paste on there, but it says 8580, and that's the later revision of the SID chip. I'm going to take this out. Thankfully, this one is socketed, so I can just take it out and put it right back in. Okay, so this pin right here, this is pin 26. This is the pin that's giving us trouble. So I can just bend this pin outward just a little bit. And now when I put it back in there, this pin won't be connected. Now, these two pins have bent out a little bit, so I need to bend those back. Okay, that looks pretty good. A couple of other pins that are, just a little bit. Okay, so now I can put this right back in there and all the pins will be connected except for pin 26. Okay, and now it's time to put this back together. Okay, now we got it back together and hopefully that'll clear up the noise. Well, sometimes things don't go to plan. The fix I tried on my Commodore 64 didn't work. I've done some research and there are some other things I can try, but this video is already behind schedule, so I decided I'd use an emulator. I'm using a music tracker called Sid Wizard. I tried opening Sid Wizard in Vice, the most popular Commodore 64 emulator, and unfortunately I got the same noise in the emulator that I got on the real C64. So it seems that Sid Wizard might be causing the noise and not the hardware. But we've got a way around that. There is actually a version of Sid Wizard for Windows, and that's what I'm using. It doesn't emulate the Commodore 64, but it does emulate the SID chip, and that's what we need to give us that classic C64 sound. Now, sometimes I film things out of order, so here's how I was going to sequence this track. Now we need a way to tell Sid Wizard what notes we want in the song. Sid Wizard lets you use the Commodore 64's keyboard like a piano to enter notes. But it's much easier to use an actual musical keyboard, so I'm going to use my Arturia Minilab Mark II. But these two devices were made nearly 40 years apart, so you may be wondering how I'll connect them. Well, I will use my Teensy-ROM. The Teensy-ROM is a card that goes in the C64's expansion port that adds several features to the C64. There's a network port, which allows you to connect to the internet. We won't be using that in this project. A micro SD card slot that allows the use of cartridge images and program files. This is how we'll load Sid Wizard. And finally, a USB port that allows us to connect MIDI controllers like the Minilab. Okay, so everything I just said about the Teensy-ROM no longer applies. I'm still using the Minilab, but it's connected to my PC via USB. I can go ahead and start sequencing the different parts of the song in Sid Wizard. Rather than using traditional music notation, music trackers like Sid Wizard display notes on a timeline. We don't have the usual quarter notes, half notes, and so on here. Note duration is shown in frames. Sid Wizard for Windows is based on the European PAL model of the Commodore 64, which runs at 50 frames per second. The shortest note in the Severance theme is an eighth note, so we'll let each line be the duration of an eighth note. Notes are held until you enter a new note or rest, so if we need a quarter note, we can just leave a space between the notes. The Severance theme is 128 beats per minute, so to get close to this, we'll set the duration of an eighth note to 12 frames. This will make the tempo a little bit slower than the original theme, but we're limited by the frame rate of the C64, so this is as close as we can get. Sid Wizard uses hexadecimal numbers for pretty much everything, including the number of frames. 12 in hexadecimal is 0C. Before we start sequencing, I'll give you an example of what the different instruments sound like. So here's the piano. This is a vocal effect I'm using. They call it vocal. It doesn't really sound like a voice, but that's just what it's called in Sid Wizard. Here's the violin. A bass drum. A shaker. Snare drum. A side stick. Okay, so now I'll go back to the piano and I'll give you an example of what some of the different parts of the song sound like. Okay, so that's the low part, and here's one of the high parts. Like I mentioned in my iMac G4 video, I don't actually play the piano, so that was a little sloppy. But that's okay, because when we switch to sequence mode, we'll enter the notes one at a time. The SID chip in the Commodore 64 has 3 voices, which means it can make up to 3 sounds at once. We want to make more than that, but that's okay because we're going to mix the track on the iMac G4. Okay, I'll go ahead and sequence all the parts, and then we can start mixing. We've got all the instruments sequenced, and now we're ready to transfer them to the iMac. Okay, so far everything that can go wrong has gone wrong in this project. I didn't know I was making a Michael MJD video. Originally, I was going to record the audio from my Commodore 64 into the iMac, but well, you know how that went. So since I ended up using Sid Wizard for Windows, I just recorded the audio from Sid Wizard into Audacity, so we'd have a nice clean recording. Anyway, now I'm on the iMac and I'm ready to mix the track. I wanted to do a screen recording, but to do that I would need the paid version of I Show You, and the version I need is so old that there's no longer a way to buy it. And it's extremely CPU intensive anyway, so I'd have a hard time running both I Show You and GarageBand. So now you get to look at the iMac recorded by my phone. I've got all the instruments recorded in GarageBand, so now we're ready to mix the track. Great, now the track is fully mixed, and after all that work, I think we've earned a music dance experience.
Well, these numbers are starting to look pretty scary, so I better get back to refining, but that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a like. And if you want to see more videos like this, why not go ahead and subscribe? Are you a fan of Severance? What did you think of the season finale? What do you think is going to happen in season 3? Let me know in the comments. I've got lots more projects like this coming up, so if you want to see previews of my projects, follow me on your social media platform of choice. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll join me again on the Retro Workbench.